So what we're going to talk about today is the characteristics of great hires. So if you're out there and you are having trouble hiring staff, we would like to know that. And from what we're seeing and hearing from our members, this is across the board the number one issue right now. It's so unusual because a year ago we had staff and no dogs because of COVID, and we were trying to find a way to keep our staff. And for many of you, I know you had to furlough people or lay them off or just find creative other jobs for them. And now we're finding that we have lots and lots of dogs and not enough staff. And it's painful for all of us. So we're going to just talk about ways that you can go about looking for new hires. I was just telling Susan right before we came on this Facebook Live, I was listening to the news yesterday in my area, which is Colorado Springs. They're opening a new Amazon warehouse out here. And they are offering, it's like starting pay is $1,750. They're offering a $3,000 sign-on bonus, which I thought was amazingly crazy. And then an additional $100 bonus if you are vaccinated and can show proof of COVID vaccination. But anyway, that tells me that Amazon's having trouble hiring too. So I think, and if you've been to any restaurants or stores in your area, I've traveled a little bit from my house to Tennessee last weekend, and every place we stopped, it seemed like there were staffing issues. And some hotels, even we were trying to make reservations, they were full. And I was like, wow, what's going on in the city that you're full? And they were like, we just don't have enough staff, so we can't sell out the hotel. We can only sell a certain number of. So I think it's happening everywhere. So with that, Susan, I'll throw it over to you. What do you want to start with? We have lots of people joining in. So Jim's here and Wendy's here from Canada. Mindy's here. So welcome everybody. Courtney's here. Howdy, Courtney from Texas.
I think the temptation when it's hard to hire is to hire to have a warm body. And I think that's what I want to caution people not to do, because right now I was talking to several of our members yesterday that what you need to be thinking about is protecting the team you do have and taking really good care of them and appreciation to the people that you do have. And you guys know this, we've all experienced it. If you bring in one bad apple, that can ruin the bunch and be the tipping point to lose some of the really good people that you've got on your team. And so as tempting as it is to lower your bar and lower your standards when it's hard to find people, I just caution not to do that because of the potential impact you're going to have on your core team.
Yeah, and I would second that. I was actually talked to a couple of people that said, I just need some warm bodies in. And it is tempting. Especially if you get those people and they walk in your lobby and they're like, hey, we're looking for a job. But I also agree that now more than ever, you have got to reward and protect and really be an advocate for your current staff, the staff that has maybe even been with you thick and thin. They may have been some of the staff you furloughed and brought back. They may have just stuck with you during COVID and transitioned their job to something else. They may be new hires that are just doing a phenomenal job, but either way, you really want to make sure that you're taking care of them and making sure that anybody you bring onto the team has a good chemistry. And that is one of our biggest things to look for, is how well does any new staff member fit into your current environment, because you really want that to be a good fit and a good match. So we have a couple of people, and this is fairly common that we're seeing right now. Peggy said we cap dogs based on safe staffing below our capacity. And I do think this is the time, unfortunately, for many of us, we want to take as many dogs as possible, obviously to cover losses from last year. But this is also the time to think about safety and what can you actually manage from a staffing standpoint. And I know it's about to be the 4th of July for those of us in the United States, where that tends to be a busy holiday season. So we are getting more and more bookings, but you really do have to decide what's safe for you to handle, because the money would be nice, but it's not gonna work if you have injuries or you just burn out your staff because you're running them ragged, trying to take more dogs than you can really manage. So and we've talked about this on other Facebook Lives, but this is also time to look at your pricing and make sure you're priced properly so that you can pay the staff and pay yourself as well. And it may even be time to look at a price increase
Mm.
if you haven't done that yet over the summer, because bookings are increasing. And especially if you can't take as many dogs, then at least make sure that you're generating as much revenue per pet for the dogs you can take. Teaching your staff how to upsell is another really important thing right now, because that's going to get you a higher value revenue per pet. If you can upsell activities or a special treat or something happens at night, whatever it is. But all of those things I think can help weather this storm that we're all going through right now. So Courtney says we did that also. So they capped their dogs and they raised their pay as well. So that's awesome. Peggy also said we did across the board increase and started quarterly bonus for basically doing your job, not calling out, no write-ups. So that's actually that's a new twist on the bonus. We have seen a lot of people doing bonuses for new hires, but I think that's a really creative solution, Peggy, to reward your current staff and basically incentivize them for doing their job, not calling out, not getting into trouble or doing things wrong or whatever. I think that's a great idea.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Anything you can do to retain them, and trying maybe once the holiday is passed, if you can sure they're getting time off, at least one full day, if not two off. And that talk about self-care and just really reward. I saw on Facebook that I think your clients are also understanding this. I saw one of our members that they had clients that had brought in and was doing a Sunday party for the resort, which is awesome. I think it's important to let your clients know, especially if you are having to cap numbers. And this is when you can reward your long term clients that are patient and kind and nice to you. One of the members I was talking to yesterday was just really stunned that a long-term client that they'd had three generations of dogs with got really upset when they had this respiratory stuff that a lot of people are also dealing with go through, and it was just shocking how annoyed that was. And we talked about we all need grace with each other, and that I think everybody's under stress right now, and so we just need to have patience. Considering how you can reward those clients that are sticking with you for the limited spots you have is a good thing, because what you don't want to do is lose that core team that's helping you through the summer.
So in terms of that revolving door of staff turnover, so you have, and Bob said it earlier, I think it was Bob. Yeah. So we have people who either don't show for an interview or don't show after being hired. So we're going to talk about a little bit about that, about finding the right people. But first, I want to just touch on briefly, what are some of the reasons, Susan, that you think that there is a high turnover? And we've talked about some of this on previous Facebook Lives as well, which you can find on our YouTube channel. But I think there's some things that we typically have said. If you're finding yourself constantly having a revolving door of staff turnover, there's a few things you should look at. So do you want to talk about some of those things, Susan?
Absolutely. You need to have a very strong hiring and onboarding system. And we have talked about that on a Facebook Live. But being very organized as far as up to date job descriptions, employee handbook, your SOP manual, and a solid orientation, onboarding, and formal staff training process. That's going to help you stand apart. And part of the hiring process, because like Bob said, people not showing up or not coming to work after you hire them, is you do need to hire fast, especially those good people that align with your culture that you want, because anybody that is looking for a job and is good is going to get hired right away. So you got to make sure you are very timely and communicate the timeline of your process. We did some research on ghosting, which is basically people no showing. And a big part of the reason why people ghost is that they aren't getting communication on what is the timeline from the people that they've applied with. And so being faster and communicating more with candidates is really important.
Yeah, and I think the onboarding process is the other part, is the really great team players that we all want to hire. They want organization and they want accountability and they want some idea that they can get better and have more responsibility long term. It's not going to happen the day you hire them, obviously, but you want them to understand there's a definite way that you do a good job, and there's a definite way that you get held accountable, and there's a definite way that you can progress, whether it's through more responsibility, a different cross training opportunity, or a career path in general where you're getting a promotion of some sort. If you don't have that, and you are just bringing these people in and you're like, hey, do this, do that, do this, and there's no rhyme or reason to it, guess what? You're not going to keep the best people, because the best people want something different. So you really have to set up your structure. And we do, if you haven't heard us talk about that stuff before, definitely go check out our YouTube channel. There's a whole playlist on staff training. And we talk a lot about that, because that is one of the factors of keeping people with you. Recognizing them and rewarding them is another one. And that's why I love Peggy's idea. But celebrating them, motivating your team, being a team leader and a cheerleader, not just the disciplinarian. And I think a lot of times we find ourselves in the disciplinarian role where we get upset when the staff doesn't do stuff. But you also have to have, and probably more often have, the hat on as you're being their cheerleader, or you're being the encourager, or you're being the coach where you're helping them and you're understand and you really like them and you're trying to help them reach their goals, not just get them to help you reach your
Yeah,
goals.
I think
All of that I think is important.
that's the key thing is right now you have to look finding employees as a marketing task to where you're marketing why they should pick you and come work for you. So that means you've got to look at it from what's in it for the employee to pick your job over the Amazon warehouse at 1750 if you're not paying 1750. Even if you are, why should they pick you over that Amazon job? And so it is laying out in your universe in your interviewing process what it's all about them and what do they get by being a part of the team. And you guys have one of the best things going for you is that you do get to work with pets. And a lot of people have that desire. It's how do you make it fun and it's not just the cleaning and working every weekend and every holiday. You may have to get a little creative and find some flexibility as far as people getting some weekends off or rotating assignments on holidays to make your positions more attractive to people. I do think that during the pandemic, society has outlooked has changed and people have different priorities. So to get people to come in, you may have to adapt and change some of your current policies.
Yeah, and we talked a lot about the fact that people are getting unemployment, and maybe that's influencing them not to go to work because they're sitting at home getting a check. I do think that's obviously an issue. That's going away in many states. I don't feel like the staffing is coming back as quickly as that stuff's going away. So I also think there's other issues. And I do agree that the fact that COVID forced people to be at home and forced a lot of people to have more free time, or time with their families, or time to learn a new skill or whatever, the pace of life slowed down in whatever that looked like for most people. But I also think that now those folks who are looking for a job are in the mindset of I want a job, but I want to have flexibility and I want to have more time with my family. Like they saw how important that stuff was and is, that maybe they discounted before, and it came glaring up in their face because COVID gave them the ability to do that. So I think really looking at a more flexible schedule, and we've talked a little bit about that. Like no longer can you hire people and just expect them to work every holiday. I don't think you're going to get good quality team members that way. I think you're going to need to work with some kind of flexible schedule. I think you're going to have to look at creative benefits, and we've talked about this a little bit in the past as well. One of the biggest benefits for some facilities or some stores like Starbucks is giving subscriptions to Spotify. And that's not your normal benefit, but
Right.
it's something that highly valued by their employees. So looking at those creative benefits that you're allowing your staff to use that might not look like the things you've offered in the past, finding out what they really want. But I think a lot of them really want flexible schedules, a little bit more creative opportunity within the facility in terms of what they can do and what maybe you can help them with. And I think that's going to help to keep them. And they really do want an environment where they feel like they're participating in a larger, something larger than themselves. So what does that look like for your business? And have you done a very good job of portraying that and helping your staff understand that? if you were going to look for, we talked a little bit about this on our failed technology Facebook Live a few weeks ago. But I know, Susan, you were talking about some really specific things to look for in an employee when you're going to hire. My default is always hire nice people.
Yes.
With you, number one thing, I don't care if they don't know a thing about dogs
Right.
or cats or whatever. I can teach that stuff. That is like the easiest stuff to teach. How you take care of a dog, how you clean a run, how you hose the floor down, how you let dogs in, how, teaching canine body language. That's all teachable.
Yeah.
But if I have a person who's just not nice, it's really hard to teach them to be nice. So that's one of my tips would be to
Mhm.
hire people who have soft skills, who are nice, who present themselves well, who come across respectful and have an engaging conversation with you and then fit with your team. All of that I think is really important. What are some of the other things you would look for, Susan?
I think getting really clear on your business core values, and you mentioned what is your purpose and passion. You want to find the people who align with your company's mission and purpose and align and live your core values. And so if you haven't had to look at those in a while, go back to it because that's the people that are going to fit in with your team because they're already living those core values. And so, and part of the other thing that I think is really important is finding people who are coachable, who will take feedback because you can train them, but you want them to be coachable. So, figuring out how coachable is the candidate. And there's, some interview questions we'll talk about in a minute for that. It boils down to when we were doing research on the whole ghosting and the things that are going on right now. What I loved about one of the books that I researched was spending time and thinking about the best person you've had in that role and what was their behavior and how do you see that behavior in action, and then think about the people who are in that revolving door and don't work out. What is their behavior and what does that behavior look like in action, and then designing your interview process to make sure you're finding out for potential candidates, are they going to be one of those top people or average, and avoiding the behaviors, most importantly, of those low performers. Because if you can just not hire the people who end up being the low performers, you're going to have a team that's either a high performer or average, which is really, you can get a lot done with that with your business. And so I think it's using your experience of, especially you've got some core team members right now that I'm sure are those behaviors you want to see, and you guys know the ones you don't, focusing your interview process to determine that from the start.
So a couple comments. Kirsten said she started texting the evening before the interview, send our address and say, look forward to meeting you. That's helped with interview
Awesome.
ghosting. Still have a couple people that don't show up on days of work. I do think, like, here's the reality. Susan and I have this conversation all the time because Susan and I, we have decided are abnormal. Like when you, in a good way though, when we are like, oh, I won't even show you my calendar right now, but if Susan and I showed you our calendar, it looks ridiculous. Like we have just Facebook lives and meetings and masterminds and coaching calls and phone calls, and it's all on our calendar, and I pretty much live and die by my calendar. And if you, like, right now I have stuff 3 months from now on my calendar, and I will show up because they're on my calendar. So Susan and I are always like, why do we have to? I don't remind Susan of anything. She doesn't remind me of anything. We just show up wherever we're supposed to show up. And that we found out that's abnormal. Like most people don't live that way. I don't know why. I think everybody should. But what we do find is even our reminders to others outside of the dog gurus, it's usually an email. We've even found that doesn't always work because
Mhm.
guess what? There's a boatload of people that have hundreds and thousands of, literally hundreds and thousands of unread emails. So I have now started to do texting. I think texting is a great opportunity to do that reminder. I also think I Facebook message people, and I finally have more success with a lot of people through Facebook Messenger. I still do email, and the dog gurus primarily communicates through email. But I'm telling you that if that's the only way you're communicating, you may be missing out. You may be sending them, and maybe you don't even do the reminders. And there is a mindset because Susan and I bounce back and forth between I don't have to remind them. If they can't figure it out, then
Not your mama.
yeah, I'm not your mama. That's our phrase within the dog gurus. And so We would love for people to just do that, but I'm telling you this more and more. If you want to help yourself and you are finding that people are ghosting you, take the extra step and go the extra mile and text them. We have usually reminders 24 hours before, and then like the evening before, like Kirsten said, and then a lot of times even 15 minutes before. So if you ever sign up for our webinars, you'll getting those, but typically you're getting them an email.
So yeah, part of your
Really
interview
important.
process may be asking the candidate, how can we best communicate with you and find out. And I would say if they're young, it's going to be text, which I cannot manage myself in text very well. In fact, I had to apologize to a member because she had texted me and I said, yes, I'll call you back, and because it wasn't on my calendar and wasn't in my email, yeah, I had to apologize for not calling back. Finding that out is really important. I think it's hard right now, and it is so tempting just to hire that warm body, but don't. You guys want to be better than that and building for your future. And so, what's really important is also having a culture of learning and promoting that to the candidates, that there are a lot of opportunities to learn, because that is what the millennials and people expect. And so I think part of what you've taken for granted may need to come up and be part of this whole marketing pitch for your candidates. Using video, people don't read. And so communicating in video with your candidates is another strategy to meet them where they are. If you have instructions for them, you can tell them in the video and send them a video text that you're excited that they're interested in your opportunity and this is the next step. I do think you're going to have to change a lot about your hiring process and your benefits. And I even think your wage ranges need to come up, and then you need to pass that along through your pricing to be able to compete and build the workforce you need to provide services.
So Courtney said, y'all are cracking me up. I guess I need to start looking for more abnormal people. Courtney, you're abnormal too. I hate to tell you, but Courtney, in a good way, in the same way that we are. Courtney, you're also like very organized and scheduled. So you're abnormal too. So Tiffany said, so this is a good one. I like this comment. So Tiffany said, if they're not responsible enough to follow the email reminder, is there someone responsible enough to show for work when they have to look at their own schedule? So here's the thing. Like, honestly, I think that I learned my anal retentive, whatever you want to call it, the ability to show up on time. I learned in the Marine Corps. I don't know that I was that good at it before, but believe me, in the Marine Corps, if you are late, it's very obvious and you are never late again. Like it's just how it is in the Marine Corps. And I feel like Susan was in corporate America, and I think that's a totally different environment as well. So I'll let Susan speak to that. But I know within the Marine Corps, and I had jobs before I was in the Marine Corps. I worked at Hardee's when I was in college, when I was in high school. And I can remember being late occasionally, but I was pretty tried to be on time, but it was also part of my school grade. So I think there was a sort of certain incentive for me to be on time because of that. But in the Marine Corps, I first of all learned to be on time because you had to. And second of all, I was sent to a ton of training. I went to the Franklin Covey School. I got a lot of education on that. So I take it for granted now. But when I would say between 16 and 21, I don't know that I did that. I did it all the time. So I think to answer your question, I do think that there's people that might miss an appointment time and still be a really good employee. And that's where I'm thinking, to go back to what Susan just said about having an education of learning, an environment of learning. I think that's where you help them to see, here's why it's important for you to be on time. I don't think any of them think about the fact that when they're late, it might put a whole schedule behind, and now you have 5 dogs that aren't being fed. I don't think anybody would willingly say, I don't care about the dogs. I just don't think they think about it. They just assume someone else there is going to take care of those dogs. So you really have to break it down for them and show them why that's important, which is why some of the most popular modules we have in Pet Guru College are all about how to be a good employee. And I can't believe we have to teach this, that you should show up on time, that you should be nice to people, that you should work as a team. But how do those people know that unless you grew up in a family? And I, thankfully I did. Like I had a good family environment to grow up in, but where things like, probably because my father was a Marine, but things like being on time and being responsible and integrity and like all of that was instilled in me when I was younger. But not everybody has that. And
Right.
maybe not every school teaches it. And not every teacher you're like, everybody comes from so many different backgrounds. I'm on a soapbox all of a sudden. Like, apparently, Tiffany found another soapbox for me. But I do think that people, I don't necessarily think that just because they missed the interview means, and nobody, they never got a reminder or whatever, it doesn't mean that they can't be a good employee.
Yeah, I would say in this current economic times, I would be tempted to give those people a chance and maybe even ask them what happened. And if this were to happen on the job, how would they handle the situation? You can learn a lot about people there. I also read an article, interestingly, that I found interesting recently on hiring introverts. And that stuck with me because I'm an introvert, and that a lot of introverts don't interview well, and that you can help set them up for success, maybe even sending them one or two of your key interview questions in advance so they have time to think about the answer and come in, which I hadn't thought about. But introverts can be great employees, especially with dogs. They may not be great on your front desk, but they could be great in animal care. And maybe considering that when you're doing your assessments of how people respond, that if you're a natural introvert, interviewing is very challenging and hard for you.
Yeah, and Mindy was talking a little bit about, she starts I won't show it up because it won't fit all on there, but she starts a casual interview, letting people know that they're just going to have a casual conversation to get to know each other and go over what stood out on their resume, which I think is a great idea. And then they go over the core values. We hire based off of those and then review the job ad. So she said this really relaxes people and drops their guard so I can read between the lines. And I do this because after we hire them, and this is the problem. But then she's asking, what would you look for to find the committed people? Is it just a numbers game? Should we expect a certain number of people to not work out?
Mhm.
I
I
think,
think, yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I always wanted to have that core team that was rather steady. And I don't know, it was probably 70 to 80% of my staff, and then 20 to 30% would turn over, but not like every month. They would turn over maybe every 6 months to a year. But I wanted to have some core staff with a 2, 3, 5 year tenures.
And I was going to say, I think a lot of the numbers, I think to some extent it is a numbers game, but I don't think you should be having a huge turnover, just like Susan said. I do think, to go back to what Susan was talking about earlier, if you can really identify what do top performers look like, and then what do your worst people look like, avoid the bottom.
Yeah.
You might still have people that aren't top performers, but they're not the worst either. And as Susan was saying a minute ago, you end up with average to above average employees. And if you just, I know, if you just had that, it would be amazing, right? So not everybody is going to be at the top of their game, but hopefully you have people that are above average, and you always have a little bit of that 80-20 rule. But if the 80% could at least be really good, and then the 20% are those top performers, that would be better than having 80% of really lousy employees. So but I really think in terms of finding those right people, it's really looking at how well do they fit with your current staff, what kind of chemistry is there, what are their soft skills, are
Yeah.
they nice, do they present themselves in a pleasant way, do if you ask them questions about why they left another job, for instance, are they just bad mouthing the other job,
Mhm.
or do they have valid reasons that they can express without being a total negative Nelly or worse? So I think some of those questions, and then I also think really looking at what your what the skills are that you need. I think a lot of, I've just decided this, really, this is just like in the last day I was thinking about this, but I really think a lot of the problem comes because we put out this job description or job ad that basically says we want people to work with dogs and really love them, and then they get in there and they're either doing a lot of conversations with clients that they didn't realize was part of the job, or maybe they're cleaning a lot more than they thought, or maybe there's a lot of administrative details that they hate, and they just thought they were going to work with dogs, but you didn't tell them there was a whole bunch of,
Work.
yeah, paperwork too. I really feel like we haven't done a very good job for most job descriptions of usually job descriptions are like, here's all the crap you're going to have to do. And if you like doing that, then we'll hire you. First of all, that's not going to work anymore. I'm not going
Mhm.
to say I didn't do that because I had those job descriptions too. That's just not going to work nowadays. But then once you actually get a decent job description that doesn't make them feel like they're just doing grunt work the whole time, are you also actually telling them what skills they need? Are you saying you need someone punctual, reliable, a team player? Are their skill sets actually listed? Because for some of them, I think it's also, I didn't know I have to deal with people. I just came here for the dogs. I didn't know I had to be a team player too. Honestly, because I think a lot of job descriptions don't have those skill sets on there. And
Mhm.
don't even get me started on leadership or management positions, because the number one skill you need is nothing to do with dogs. The number
Animals.
one
Mhm.
skill you need as a leader or a manager or a team supervisor is the ability to manage others. And if
Mhm.
you don't have that, and you have no experience in that, doesn't mean you can't learn it. But if you're
Uh,
not looking for that and that person gets hired and they don't have that skill set, you're setting them up for failure and you're setting yourself up for failure. So I think a lot of it is finding the right people, is making sure that you're looking for the right skills to begin with.
and it is the time to invest in your leaders and helping them have better skills managing and leading people. Because the number one reason people quit their jobs is because they don't like their boss. And so if you have a lot of turnover, it could be your middle management, lower leadership positions need their skill sets boosted up and help there. It's frustrating. People are under a lot of stress. And when you have more dogs, it's a time to where tensions can run high and we can have short patience. And one of the best things I did right before I sold my business, when I would come in after a busy holiday, was I would try to put everything in perspective. And what were the most important things to me when I walked in after the holiday? Number one is I wanted all the animals to have been safe, happy, and well over the holiday. Number two, I wanted the clients to be happy and satisfied and all the bills paid. Other than that, everything else we can work on and get fixed up. And so I think when people have had to work really hard, we need to keep our perspectives and not nitpick on some of the little things. Work on that later. Just celebrate that you had a great busy weekend and you guys kept all the pets healthy and the clients are happy. That's a success.
Yeah, and that Courtney said, accountability is important. It's okay to make mistakes, just admit them and learn from them, which I think is hugely important. And I would go a step further to say the time to talk about what you might have seen over a holiday period that maybe didn't go as well as you wanted it, assuming all those things Susan just mentioned, the dogs were safe, the clients were happy, you generated revenue, everyone went home, your staff's exhausted. So let's say that Monday is the holiday. So Tuesday is not the day to say, and by the way, here's all the things that I didn't like. Wait a week. If it's not life threatening, it's like the next time you have a lot of dogs, or the next time you have a certain scenario, you could do a lunch and learn, and everybody could learn from it. As Courtney said, because I do definitely think you should learn from any kind of things that maybe you would do differently or whatever, but don't talk about it the day you should be celebrating. And that was a huge lesson for me, because I'm all about everything can get better. I'm not about celebrating that much. So I've had to learn to switch those, celebrate more, and figure out like lessons learned later. But I definitely think that's something to look at with your team, because you want to continue to get them excited and happy about what they're doing. Lisa said, what about hiring us older people? Like maybe somebody that's partially retired. Definitely a different breed with different work ethics. I totally agree with that. My best hire ever was an older woman who was, her husband was in the military. So I was near a military base. So we had a lot of military. And so her husband was in the military, but she was retired and just was looking for something to do. So she actually came in as a daycare handler, and I ended up promoting her to be my office manager, and she did all the staffing stuff. She dealt with all the staff because frankly, she was 100 times better than me at it, which is why I promoted her. But she was great because of her maturity level and her past experience. She did a much better job of working with the team members than I did even. And yeah, I definitely think if you've got other folks that are looking for jobs, I would definitely look at hiring them. So
You may need to be add some flexibility in that they're part-time positions. Instead of hiring one full-time, you may need to hire 3 part-time to fill your hours, because people that are semi-retired may not want to work every day or 40 hours a week. They may want to work in the mornings or in the afternoons. So again, I think flexibility is such a key word for us now, that you can't keep doing things the way you've always done them, because the society has changed. And I keep telling everybody, well, let's wait till after Labor Day. But something's telling me this isn't changing after Labor Day. Robin and I were talking that before we got on. I'm not convinced. I think this is a real shift, which means, and as entrepreneurs, this is what you guys are great at, is figuring out how to adjust and shift to meet the environment your business is operating in.
yeah, and I think we should maybe do this, Susan, because I just thought about it this second ago. But an interesting thing to look at, I brought up before that my daughter is a CNA. So I know in the hospital, obviously, because she works in a hospital, they need 24/7 coverage, and they're caring for animals. Well, they're caring for humans, but humans are animals when it comes right down to it. The point being, they don't expect her to work every Christmas. And she's in a hospital. So they've worked out a schedule where she did not work Christmas last year, so she will probably be working Christmas this year. But it would be interesting to see what are other industries doing right now that have 24/7 responsibilities and care. So first responders, EMTs, hospitals, because I feel like sometimes we think in the pet industry, well, there's no way we can give that flexibility, and they have to work all the time. We need overnight care, we need holiday care, and all that. But there's other industries that happens. So, and it would be interesting to see how other industries are changing. But I definitely think that level of flexibility has to happen in the pet industry. I don't know if we have a good number for this, but Mindy said my turnover recently with new hires has not been great. What's the industry standard for new hire turnovers? Do you know? It feels out of 5 people, 3 may actually work.
I think that's high. I think that's high good, actually, which is bad. I do know the last time we did the pet industry survey, which was in 2019 for 2018 data, because with COVID, we just didn't do it. It was basically people had 100% turnover. So if they had a staff of 20, they hired 20 people every. We've had that issue before, and I think it's only going to get more challenging now, which is why we've said for a long time, create a career path, present the opportunities. But now I think we have to do even more to be able to reduce that turnover. So I think you're doing pretty good, Mindy.
And then Rachel said, this is a good question. Amen to the holiday celebrations. In addition, it's been my experience that another big reason for high staff turnover comes as a result of folks not feeling like they have a voice or are being properly supported. For example, maybe they feel overwhelmed by challenging behaviors from certain dogs out in the yard, but when they vocalize their concerns, to management, they aren't offered additional support, and there starts to become yard dread. That's a great one. This was actually years ago why I implemented certain policies that certain dogs couldn't attend, or I kicked out dogs. It was because of some of the input from my staff. Or I would just work with the client to reduce the number of times the dog came or whatever. But I did have situations where the one that I always talk about is we used to have a dog named Max. He was a chocolate lab, and he was a barker. He liked to bark all day long. And we, like, lo and behold, Wednesdays were the most biggest day that people would call out. And I think that happened. I think the call outs happened because initially people were complaining, and I was like, because of course he never did it when I was back there. It'd be like, I don't know why you guys are having a problem. This is why I hired someone else to manage my team, because it wasn't all that good with my staff for a long time. I got better, but initially, this was early on. I would go back and I'd be like, I don't know what the problem is. Like, he doesn't bark when I'm back here. And then I would leave and he'd bark and whatever. I was not helping my team. And then I would have people calling out. And finally I was like, why does everyone always calls out on Wednesday? Like, we have the most call outs on Wednesday. And I had one employee who always had I love her to this day, because she was always the one that would be like, Robin, you're screwing up. Just
She has courage.
like, she
Yeah.
was my truth teller, and she'd be like, Robin, people are calling out because nobody wants to work with Max. And I'm like, really? Because Max is no problem. She's yes, he is, and we've been trying to tell you. So I do listen. If nothing else, I'm a good listener and I learn from people. So I did have a conversation with Max's owner, and we agreed to some training protocols, and we agreed on shorter times out in the yard and more rest and a whole bunch of things. And it went away. So it goes back to exactly what Rachel's saying, is that you really do need to be the advocate for your staff. And if your staff is having an issue, and you can, and especially if more than one of them is complaining about the same thing, I would definitely listen to them and find out how you can help them to solve that problem and really help them to make, because really what they're saying is working here is not fun. And if you make them work that way for a long time, you need to listen. Even if it's only 10% of the truth of what they're telling you, there's some truth in it if you have a lot of people complaining about the same thing. And unfortunately, that may be that for me, I had to look at myself. It
Yeah.
was like, I guess I need to change what I'm doing. But I really think that's important. And we can't just have this mentality of it's my way or the highway, because you could
Well,
have
you can,
that.
but you may be the only one working there.
Exactly. You can have that attitude, but it's not going to help you.
Not
So
going to help you build a team and keep a team.
exactly. So I definitely think that's a huge one. And I think it's so easy for us, especially once your business gets big enough to where you're not with the dogs all the time, and things can start, I won't say degenerating, but things can start to change and you don't even know they've changed until you hear it. So making sure you're checking in with your staff routinely to make sure what do you like that's going really well? What do you think we should change? And making sure that they feel comfortable approaching you. 'Cause I will tell you, my staff did not feel comfortable approaching me.
Yeah.
Again, because I had a little bit different leadership style initially. I think it's better now, but I had that one employee who would. I had that one employee that would be like, Robin, and she would just be blatantly honest with me. And to this day, I just love her for that, because I would have never learned a lot of that stuff had she not done that.
Well, and I think this is the time we say take care of and be appreciative and support your current team that's keeping things going. But also think about what do they need? How can you support their career and what they want to do long term? And we talk about being a little flexible with job duties and responsibilities, finding out what some of people's hobbies and passions are. And is there a way you can incorporate that into their job? Maybe not right now when it's super busy, but having the conversation with them that you want to do that, say maybe come September or October, may keep someone there that otherwise might think this isn't fun. I would rather do something where I can actually express my creativity. But if they know that you're interested in helping them do that for you, they may stay. So we talk about having one-on-ones on a regular basis with all of the staff so that the supervisors meeting with everybody that reports to them on a regular basis. Like we say every week. Right now, that would be tough. I would grant you that. So right now, if you can do it once a month, that's important. But it's dedicated time to where that staff member knows they get to have an audience with their boss and talk about the future and opportunities. What do you like? What's going well? What could we do to support you better? Where do you see yourself in 1 to 2 years? How can we help you get there? Suddenly now you're the employer who cares about me.
Yeah, and
And
I was going to say a lot of those same questions, asking them when they're interviewing too. Are you asking them what? Obviously, most people say, "Why do you want to work here?" But
yeah.
beyond that, are you asking follow-on questions to find out what do they really like? Why are they? Maybe they're going to work just until they go back to college, which tells you they're probably not going to be there that long. However, that could be a great return summer client or summer employee for the future. Maybe they're going to say, I'm trying to get into vet school. And that's an opportunity for you to be like, okay, we can help you with that. Come on board and we can look at some benefits that might help to pay some of your tuition or your books or whatever. If they come in and they're like, I'm trying to get into the marketing field, but I need money in the meantime, maybe there's an opportunity for them to do some marketing for you to get some experience and have that on their resume. And so I think it's really asking those questions and then asking follow-on information and then actually listening to what their answers are and how you might be able to help them. And I think that completely will change your interview with them, I can guarantee, because most companies don't ask that. I think a lot of the bigger companies do ask those questions, but a lot of the smaller companies don't really ask those kinds of, by bigger companies, I mean like Amazon, Walmart, those kinds of things. But I think really making sure that they understand that this is about them just as much as it's about you getting a staff member is really important now.
Yeah.
All right, hang on. I'm checking the questions now. Oh, so Courtney said, this is good. Courtney said, surprise out to lunch trips are a nice way to catch an employee off guard in a good way. Also gives them the ability to speak freely without other staff around. I love that, Courtney. That's an awesome idea. And how great will your employee feel if you just offer to take them out one-on-one? I think that's awesome. Lisa said, I have an advantage as I'm just opening my doors soon that I'm starting from scratch and can be more personal with an employee. Yeah, I will say, as someone who did have to change my leadership style, it is hard to change for a lot of reasons because change is just hard in general, but it's hard to change a culture. It's really hard to change a culture once it's established. And sometimes you have to wipe the slate clean and almost start over to change your culture. But I definitely think you can change it. And it just starts with making that commitment to say, okay, this is what I want the culture to be. And I'm going to start making sure people are held accountable if they're not living up to this culture. And definitely, if you're starting brand new, you have a great opportunity to form that culture. And I will say it doesn't take a lot to ruin your culture too, if you have a really
Oh,
strong one, which goes back to what Susan was saying in the beginning about really taking care of your team and make sure that as you're hiring right now, you're not bringing in the wrong people. Because one toxic person, we've all seen this, one toxic person just can change the whole environment. It's just like in dog daycare, like one dog can get everybody all crazy. And then you take that one dog out and you're like, this place is great. The same thing with staffing, really. All right, last comment here. It's almost two. Something that worked really well for me as a leader, as well as to help my team feel seen and heard, was allowing my team to review my performance as a leader during staff reviews. I set it up so they could offer feedback anonymously, but it really went a long way towards making people feel like they had a voice. I know it's
that's
nervous.
awesome.
Yeah, nerve-wracking, nervous to open that option as a manager, but it did make me a better leader. And I do think those, sometimes they're called 360 evaluations, but anyway, where you're letting them know of an option where they can provide feedback, I do think is really important. I think, and Rachel, what I love about that is obviously you're open to hearing that criticism, because sometimes you'll hear stuff that is not easy to hear. But again, I think that's what is going to help your leadership to be better. If you can hear those things and then try to make some changes yourself and listen to what would be the most important part of that you want to, and hopefully hear some good things too, but hopefully it's not all negative. But I think that's a
Well,
great idea.
I think as leaders, we're always growing and learning and getting better. It never stops. We always have opportunity to be a better leader. And so I think just letting your team know that, and hopefully the managers and supervisors you're hiring, you're coaching them to learn that too. And I think the most important thing you can do as a leader is admit when you make a mistake.
Totally would agree. All right. Any other last comments you want to talk about? So we talked about making sure you're having you have a strong hiring process to begin with. Those job descriptions are good. The foundation is good. And we have a whole nother YouTube video on that. If you go to our YouTube channel, you'll find that as well. And then really looking at trying to set up your interview process to find the people who are presenting the characteristics of the best quality people you want, and especially that positive nature, the kindness, the likability factor, and how well they fit into your team. And then really, like Susan said, looking for someone that's coachable, someone that really is interested in learning and values educational opportunities, and then looking at how you can help them, what you can do to help advance them in whatever goals they might happen to have as well, and taking a hard look at how much you're really investing in your team for what they want and not necessarily just what you want. I think those are the critical points. But do you have any other last minute comments you want to say on this
Well,
topic?
if you're still struggling to find people, I would experiment in your ads and in your approach, and maybe even get feedback from your existing team and how you can be more flexible in your structure, either in some part-time roles or rotating shifts. What can you do to be flexible that would make the job more appealing? Other than that, you had a great list.
And I will say, wait, I'm getting ready to post a link here. multitasking. I will say that if you're frustrated because you can't find staff, know that you are not alone in that. It is not just in the pet industry. It's all over right now, everywhere, and especially hospitality, hotels and restaurants, but even outside of that, we've seen it everywhere. So don't give up. And like I
Well,
said, just keep trying to get the right people for your team. What were you
and
gonna
just
say?
well, we all just need to have grace with each other. So think about it when you're going somewhere, if the service isn't great or things happen, you guys are a small business and understand this. I have seen on Nextdoor just some horrible posts going up, and we just all need to have grace and patience with each other and be nice and kind. And
Exactly.
so remember that with other businesses and support them because everybody needs that right now.
Yeah, and share with your clients what's going on too. Let them know
Absolutely.
that you're and some of them might not be happy about it, but you need to be upfront to say, "Look, we are only taking this many dogs because that's the dogs we can take care of safely with the staff shortages." And I don't think that's going to be a surprise to them, but I do think communicating to them and thanking them when they're around that situation, I think is important as well.